Hello friends, how are you all doing? Welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel, Cinema Update, where you get the hottest, most dangerous, and most powerful movie updates from Hollywood that no one else talks about. And today we are diving into a film that's not just the third and final chapter of the biggest sci-fi story of this century, but a cinematic journey that has taken movie lovers around the world into a storm of emotion, philosophy, and visuals so deep and consuming that it becomes impossible to come out unchanged. So let's begin with Dune. Part 3, the exclusive first-part script that will take you back into the golden sands where fate is written and history is erased. When Dune, Part 2 ended, the storms had passed, but the echoes they left behind are still shaking the entire universe. Paul Atreides, once just a prince, now stands as a living myth, a messiah, a name spoken in prayer and feared in politics. And this third part doesn't begin with peace. It begins with silence, heavy with the arrival of another storm. Paul is no longer just a man, he is now living inside destiny. He sees glimpses of coming times, he feels every betrayal, every battle, every love, and every sacrifice before they even happen. And that makes him both weaker and more unstoppable. Now that the Emperor's empire has collapsed and the Harkonnens have been ripped from the roots of power, Paul holds in his hands a force he never truly desired. But this story isn't just about power. It's a tale of conflict where faith and love collide, where Chani, his beloved, finds herself in a relationship where it's no longer just about the heart, but about responsibilities, promises, and a prophecy that even Paul himself struggles to understand. Zendaya brings such raw truth to Chani in this film that her eyes don't just show love anymore, they reflect doubt too, because she now sees Paul not just as her lover, but as a god. And when a god loses his way, it is humanity that dies first. On the other side, Irulan, whom Paul married for political alliance, now finds herself trapped in a web where she's neither fully his queen nor fully his enemy. Florence Pugh delivers a deeply layered performance, where her quiet movements and the restless thoughts written in her secret diary reveal the turmoil of a woman raised by the Bene Gesserit, trained to manipulate history, now uncertain whether her purpose is to serve Paul or to shatter him. And then comes the game changer, Scytale. Robert Pattinson plays this role with a chilling smoothness that both terrifies and fascinates. Scytale is not human as we know it. He's a face dancer, a shapeshifter who can steal your face, your memories, even your soul. He is the secret agent of the Ben Tleilax, masters of genetic engineering and manipulation, whose mission is not to kill Paul, but to replace him. Slowly, silently, so perfectly that when the real Paul stands before them, even his own people may call him the imposter. Meanwhile, Lady Jessica, Paul's mother and a former Bene Gesserit turned rebel, returns from Caladan with a prophecy so ancient and dangerous that even the sisterhood had hidden it away. This prophecy can either crown Paul as eternal or destroy his rule from its core. Her return disturbs Irulan, who sees Jessica not just as a mother but as a looming threat, a shadow who can rewrite the entire game. Back in the desert, the Freemen no longer stand united. Some still see Paul as their divine leader, but others have started to view him as a tyrant cloaked in prophecy. Stilgar, once his most faithful ally, now stands at a crossroads. He begins to doubt not Paul, but the faith that binds them, and the desert, once a mere background, is now the main battleground where every grain of sand holds witness to political games far beyond imagination. Dune. Part 3 cinematography is beyond stunning. The waves of sand, the architecture of palaces, the ships floating in the sky, and the secrets buried deep within the earth. It all feels like a dream you don't want to wake up from. Denis Villeneuve once again doesn't just direct a movie, he resurrects a universe where every silence holds a scream and every scream hides a forgotten truth. Paul now fights a war within himself. He feels torn in two. One part of him is human, in love with Chani, and the other part is divine, worshipped by millions but unsure of what's right anymore. He no longer just sees the future, he feels it. Every smile looks like a trap, every vision like a warning. He dreams of his sister Aaliyah, though she hasn't even been born yet. But her voice, her mind, her presence, they're all so alive that Paul begins to question even his own sanity. And so, as Paul stood silently in the heart of the desert with the twin moons casting shadows on the dunes that once consumed his family's legacy, his mind was no longer clouded by revenge alone. It was filled with purpose, vision, and the whispers of generations that led him here. The voice of Chani echoed within him, not in pain but in power. She was no longer just a love, she was a symbol. of everything Arrakis had taught him, everything it had taken and everything it now demanded. The journey wasn't just spiritual, it was political, mythological, and deeply personal. Paul Atreides had become something greater than the Messiah. He had become the reckoning. The Fremen no longer looked at him as an outsider. They looked at him like a storm about to change the galaxy forever. With Stilgar by his side and the children of the desert ready to rise, Paul knew that Dune would no longer be a pawn in Imperial hands. It would become the throne upon which destiny itself would be rewritten. The great houses had underestimated the desert, and now the desert had its king. A man raised in noble privilege, then broken by betrayal, reborn in sand and sacrifice, and now ascending through prophecy. Meanwhile, far away from Arrakis, in the cold, metallic halls of the Spacing Guild, the whispers of Paul's rise had shaken the balance. The Bene Gesserit, in their ever-calculating manipulation, saw their centuries of breeding and planning slipping through their fingers. Paul was not their tool anymore. He was the variable they couldn't control, the storm they couldn't contain. The Emperor knew it too. Every moment that passed, the fear of losing power grew like poison in his veins. He sent new emissaries, new alliances, new assassins, all of which vanished into the desert like dust in a storm. But Dune is not just about war. It's about transformation. As Aaliyah, Paul's sister, awakened to her own terrifying powers, her visions began to fracture reality. She saw paths not meant to be seen. She walked through time like it was sand through her fingers, and what she saw both terrified and empowered her. The future of House Atreides wasn't just in Paul's hands anymore. It was in hers too, and in the whispers of those unborn. The sands of Arrakis had a will of their own. The spice didn't just grant visions, it demanded sacrifice. And sacrifices were coming. As Paul finally gathered all the tribes for one last stand, the image was unforgettable. Thousands of blue-eyed warriors roaring beneath the burning sky, the sandworms slithering in the distance like ancient gods awakening to war, and the winds whispering the name Muad'Dib, not as a prophecy, but as a warning. When the warships of the Emperor descended, expecting submission, they found defiance carved into every grain of sand. What followed wasn't just a battle, it was a cleansing. In the middle of fire and blood, Paul's voice thundered not with hate, but with truth. You came to rule Arrakis, but you never understood it. You tried to crush us, but you only made us stronger. I am the voice of this desert now, and your empire ends here. And in that moment, even the most powerful houses saw what they had unleashed. A man fused with myth, sharpened by loss and chosen by something older than the stars. As the final scenes unfold, we see a new Arrakis rising. The spice is still there, but now it flows under Fremen command. The Atreides banner flies not over conquest, but over unity. Paul does not sit comfortably on a throne. He walks among the people, still haunted by visions of what could go wrong. Because true power is not control, it is responsibility. And Dune, with all its secrets and silence, reminds us again and again. Whoever controls the spice controls the future. But the future is not something you conquer, it's something you earn. And now, as the screen fades to black and the score thunders like a rising storm, you know this saga is far from over. New threats are on the horizon, new betrayals brewing in the shadows, and deep beneath the dunes, something ancient still waits. Watching, waiting, remembering. Because on Arrakis, nothing ever truly ends. It just changes form. And as long as the desert lives, the story of Dune will keep being written in blood, in sand, and in time. Dune Part 3 is officially set to release in November 2026. Directed once again by the visionary Denis Villeneuve, whose return ensures a consistent cinematic voice and visual tone that aligns perfectly with the previous films. The film boasts a star-studded cast, including Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides, Zendaya as Chani, Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica, Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck, Florence Pugh as Princess Irulan, Austin Butler as Fade Routha, and Anya Taylor-Joy in a mysterious new role that is expected to shake the core of the narrative.